This episode of Golf Smarter Mulligans is brought to you by dynamicgolfers.com. This past weekend, we witnessed history as Phil Mickelson won the PGA Championship and became the oldest player in history, by a couple of years, to win a major. Of course, everyone from tour pros and weekend hackers were excited for Lefty's victory, but they also wanted to know how he did it. Phil has explained that there were three elements that contributed to his success: diet, meditation, and yoga. How lucky are we to have been talking about how a daily workout using dynamicgolfers.com can increase your mobility and flexibility. Now, they don't use the word yoga anywhere in their literature, but as someone who has dabbled in a yoga practice for most of my adult life, I'm more committed than ever to continuing my 15 to 20 minute morning practice utilizing dynamicgolfers.com. Not just because Phil has professed how much yoga has helped him, but because I'm getting results. Since using dynamicgolfers.com, not only do I feel better, am hitting the ball farther, and have eliminated some annoying body pains that have been bugging me for months, but also my index has already dropped a full point into the 10.5 range. So I encourage you to check them out for yourself, to follow their daily video routines and track your progress, because you will start seeing results within 4 weeks. For only $9.99 a month, you can join golfers worldwide that make dynamic golfers part of their daily routine as well. There's even a custom landing page for my listeners at dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter. Go there now to get a 7-day free trial and 15% off your membership when you check out using the coupon code GolfSmarter. So please check them out today and let me know what you think. But don't forget, to take advantage of their discount offer, use the checkout code GolfSmarter at dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter. I thank them very much for their interest in the Golf Smarter community and supporting our mission to make every one of us happier, better, smarter golfers.
Welcome to Golf Smarter Mulligans, your second chance to gain insight and advice from the best instructors featured on the Golf Smarter podcast. Great golf instruction never gets old. Our interview library features hundreds of hours of game improvement conversations like this that are no longer available in any podcast app.
It's the story of golf's most curious genius, and really an untold story about an underappreciated person who really changed the game. The story goes that Homer Kelley was the science-minded guy, but the only job he could get during the Depression was as a fry cook at a billiard hall in Tacoma, Washington. And his boss was a golf nut. He kept haranguing Homer to come out and play, and Homer would needle him back and say, you know, what's the point, what's the fun? And eventually the guy got him to come out and play. Homer went out his first time and shot 116. But he was very perplexed. He didn't understand how it could be so hard. The ball's just sitting there on a tee. It's only going to do what you tell it to do. It really was a very vexing proposition for him, and he didn't play again for 6 months. And when he did, he shot a 77.
With another interview from the archives of Golf Smarter, here's your host, Fred Green.
Our guest is Scott Gummer, and his book, Homer Kelley's Golfing Machine, subtitled The Curious Quest That Solved Golf, is a really entertaining and interesting story of an unlikely golf hero. But like the golf swing, this story has too many details for an overview. So let's just have Scott tell the story himself. Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Scott.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Fred. I very much appreciate it.
Oh, well, great, because this is a fun little book that you have here, Homer Kelley's Golfing Machine. I just want you to tell the story. And why don't we just start right there? What is this book about?
Yeah, I wrote a book about a guy who wrote a book. So, there you go.
Well, thank you very much. It was really great talking to you. And
thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, right.
No, the story is it's the story of golf's most curious genius, and really an untold story about an underappreciated person who really changed the game. And the story goes that Homer Kelley was in the Depression era. He was a science-minded guy, but the only job he could get during the Depression was as a fry cook at a billiard hall in Tacoma, Washington. And his boss, the guy who owned the place, was a golf nut, kept haranguing Homer to come out and play, and Homer would needle him back and say, what's the point, what's the fun, and eventually the guy got him to come out and play. And Homer went out his first time and shot 116, which is not unusual or even unreasonable for a first-timer. But the fact that he, for the first time to really keep score, a legitimate score and paying attention for the first time out, I found that to be very interesting too. Yeah. So, but he was very perplexed. He didn't understand how it could be so hard. The ball's just sitting there on a tee. It's only going to do what you tell it to do. There's no defense. There's nobody trying to tackle you. The ball isn't, knuckling or curving or anything like that. You're not being judged. So it really was a very vexing proposition for him, and he didn't play again for 6 months. And when he did, he shot a 77. And I hate him already. Exactly. We should all be so lucky. Right. And so he was really trying to figure out, and that day golf was great. Golf was fun. Loved it. And sure. And so he went out and sought the opinions of a golf pro, teaching pro, to explain why he was so bad one day and so good the next, and could not get a sufficient or satisfactory explanation. He said a lot of people could describe golf, but nobody could explain it. And the difference being that Homer used the example that he can tell you that, there's a car driving down the street, and that's describing, but explaining is when you get into, the internal combustion engine and, all that kind of stuff of how it actually happens. And so left without any reasonable or satisfactory explanation, if you wanted it done right, you have to do it yourself. Thus began Homer's Odyssey that took the better part of 40 years for him to really understand and study the physics and the geometry behind the swing, and not just the swing, but any swing. And the distinction there is that if Homer had simply said what other people were already saying, but Homer had simply said it in science speak, it really wouldn't have been that interesting or revolutionary. But what Homer said truly was revolutionary and different. And so in 1969, he wrote, so it was about 30 years that he had been studying before he actually self-published a book called The Golfing Machine. And Homer was nothing if not, fastidious. So he which explains why it took him 30 years to figure all this stuff out. And one of the revolutionary things that I mentioned was that whereas other golf books, notably like, Ben Hogan's famous 5 Lessons, where other instruction books ask the golfer to conform, hold the club like this, here's how you build your stance, and here's how you swing. And Homer's book really solved the golf swing for anyone, and essentially started out with, you can grip the club any one of 6 ways, reasonably speaking, and based on that, you can still find matched components that will create a scientifically sound golf swing. And that's really the basis of Homer's work, is matched components. Every golf swing exists in the book. But Homer would say that, for example, Tiger Woods might be more efficient if he matched up his components. And so the story goes that Homer self-published his book, and now he's a guy in Tacoma with a golf instruction book without any credibility or any notoriety. And just the fascinating thing about the story is that at every turn, when someone needed someone else to advance the story, that person somehow fortuitously arrived. And that person for Homer Kelley was a gentleman named Ben Doyle, legendary teacher out of Carmel Valley, who at the time was a young, 37 years old, teaching pro up in Seattle. And again, it's just fascinating the way Homer was. He was so, diligent in his study of the golf swing, but it was everything else too. Somehow or another, a big literary agent out of New York had heard about it and found him, and so before Homer would answer the initial inquiry, he got in touch with the Better Business Bureau to see if the guy was legit. And before he would go talk to Ben Doyle, he'd go park his car in the parking lot and watch Ben teach. And, it's that kind of thing. Homer had they had a piano in his house. Not one of the people who was close to him ever remembers him playing a song. Everybody remembers him playing the scales. So it's that kind of thing that is that I think speaks to the level at which he took on this this magnum opus, as it were, and so it Ben Doyle, he got it instantly. They were both Homer and Ben were both Christian Scientists, and that had a lot to do with Ben's ability to understand the approach that Homer took to the book. And so Ben then moved to Carmel Valley, where he connected with a young prodigy named Bobby Clampett, who became one of the greatest amateur golfers ever. And they became very close. Homer had 3 daughters, and Bobby had just lost his father. And they basically, worked together every day after school. And as I say, Bobby went on to have one of the, most decorated amateur careers in golf history. And then went out on tour with tremendous promise, came close. He was low amateur at the Masters and low amateur at the U.S. Open, and then showed up at the British Open in 1982 at Troon, and was on fire and had a 7-stroke lead through 5 holes in the 3rd round. And then that Saturday, that 6th hole, the wheels fell off, and he from there just stumbled his way in, shot like 76, 77 or vice versa, and wound up tied for 10th. And it really just, it just put so many questions and doubts in his mind, where he had always been so supremely confident. But it also afforded all the critics who didn't understand what Homer, had done, didn't think that he had any credibility, took that opportunity to just blast him and his theories. And then Homer died unexpectedly the following year, and really that was a double whammy that kind of sent the golfing machine on what I call a slow march toward obsolescence. And that existed for the better part of really about 15 years until we get into the new millennium, and the whole while, the golfing machine was a cult classic, and people still referred to it and used it, but kind of three things have happened to really bring it back with this renaissance of relevance, as it were. Well, 4 things. The first of which is technology came along and proved Homer right. Homer did all of his studies without any sorts of computers and whatnot. And nowadays, with all the video analysis and all the technology and things like that, a lot of that is proving Homer right, which is really tremendous.
That's amazing.
The other thing is that Steve Elkington was introduced to Ben Doyle, and just as when Ben had met Homer and Ben read the book, Homer said that he thought he could help make Ben a better teacher. And Ben had been teaching for 17 years and thought he was, doing just fine, thank you very much. But went home that night, read the book, and woke up the next morning feeling like he hadn't helped anybody. He just wondered what he'd been doing for the last 17 years.
Wow.
And to this day is the first and foremost practitioner of the golfing machine. And it was a lot like that with Elkington. He had the sweetest swing going. He'd won a major. I think he'd won the Players that year. But when he met Ben, it clicked. Elkington's a very, mathematical, science-minded kind of guy as well. And so he really began testing the golfing machine principles as taught to him by Ben under tour conditions, and and he's had a great career. He hasn't won another major since then. Although I'll tell you the fascinating thing about Elkington is he's allergic to grass.
You're kidding?
Like severely allergic to grass, which is not a good thing for a golfer.
Not a good thing for a golfer.
Not a good thing for a golfer.
I mean, like when it's fresh cut grass, or just doesn't matter?
It's just grass. It'd be like Michael Phelps being allergic to water.
Yeah. Why would? That's amazing.
Problematic.
Yeah.
And then really the next thing that happened was that a teacher named Martin Hall, who I think last year, the year before, was the PGA National Teacher of the Year, was, he bought the book after Bobby Clampett. He's a British guy, and he'd been sitting there home in the UK watching the Open Championship and heard Bobby Clampett's name and remembers him talking about the golfing machine this and Homer Kelley that and Ben Doyle. And so Martin had got in touch with Ben Doyle, got a copy of the book, read about a chapter, and then just binned it. Just couldn't work his way through it. And then as he was struggling with some different theories about how to become a better teacher, revisited the golfing machine and found an instructor who came and then it really clicked for him, was able to explain it in such a way that it really clicked for Martin. And in turn, and that's the way that Homer wrote the book. His book is as advertised, by Homer in the book, written as a textbook. And he used to use the example that, you wouldn't become a cardiologist by picking up a copy of Gray's Anatomy and starting to work your own way through it. You get a teacher and your text and you start, working and practicing. And it's very much the same way with the golfing machine. And so, Martin Hall began teaching, and another really fascinating parallel is that just as Ben Doyle had found a young prodigy who had recently lost a parent and was spending a lot of time at the golf courses, partly as a place to go get their mind off of things, but certainly a prodigy nonetheless. Martin Hall one day, one of the members at his club in Florida said that he'd like Martin to teach his granddaughter, a little tiny toe-headed 9-year-old who was, barely as big as the bag, and that was Morgan Pressel. And she went on to become the youngest ever to qualify for U.S. Open, and that's someone since has eclipsed that record. But she became the youngest ever to win a major, male or female. Notwithstanding young Tom Morris, who played a different game in a different era. But Morgan Pressel is the youngest ever to win a major, male or female, when she won the Kraft Nabisco Championship, and she is all golfing machine baby, as her, as Martin Hall calls her. Now, he wasn't teaching her, the sciences and things like that, the scientific terminology, but he wouldn't teach her angle hinging, but he'd teach her, methods that would more practical ways of explaining it that would make sense to a 9-year-old girl. And, she's now one of the top golfers on the LPGA Tour. And then, fortuitously for me, Brian Gay, PGA Tour player, is also a devotee of the golfing machine. He works through a teacher named Lynn Blake, who had studied under Homer. And, Brian Gay, he's not just winning. He's won twice this year. He's not just winning. He torched the field at the Verizon Heritage by 10 strokes. And then the week before the U.S. Open won the St. Jude in Memphis by 5 strokes. And I guarantee you this guy's not done winning yet. He's just as smooth as they come. And so that's basically, follows the arc of the narrative, but, through Morgan Pressel, finding an untold story in anywhere is hard to do these days, but finding one in the realm of golf is hard because it's a well-mined topic, but then even more so in golf instruction, which has been, written about to death. So it's, it's a story about a guy who deserves to have his story told, and the time, fortunately, the time is now, and I was fortunate to have the opportunity to get, exclusive and the first access to all his archives and artifacts. Have been sitting up in a storage unit up in Oregon. The guy who bought the business, Joe Daniels, who bought the business from Homer's widow, Sally, has, like I said, everything sitting in a storage unit, and I was, the first to be able to get to it. And so,
how did that happen? Did you come to them? They come to you? How did you get to this story?
No, my agent actually knew the story. He'd been in touch with Sally, and he had been kind of waiting for the right time, the right writer, and things like that. And after I was coming off my first book, The Seventh at St. Andrews, he suggested that I look into this, and did, and it really it just clicked and resonated, and was a story I was really interested in telling. And I think that the Joe Daniels was, obviously interested in continuing to get the word out, and this presented a good opportunity for people to find out more about Homer and his work.
Unbelievable story. He is so your book is not a golf instruction book. It's a story of a guy who did a golf instruction book.
Yeah, it really is not. There is one chapter that deals with the science that was revolutionary, and other than that, Homer's book has all the instruction in it. And
Homer's book is still available.
Oh yeah, thegolfingmachine.com.
Okay. And we'll probably, if that's available through Amazon, we'll probably put it on our site as well.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Because now I'm going to ask you about Homer's book, if you don't mind, but you were saying it's written as a textbook, but is it written for instructors or is it written for golfers? Can a golfer get the theories and put them to use on their own, or is this best utilized by a student who works with an instructor who understands the theories?
It's written for Homer's idea was for the book to be a textbook, and instructors would take that and then teach students. And that's not to say that the students couldn't go to the book, but Homer had established an authorized instructor program wherein he was trying to keep consistent the way that this would be taught. And so, a student can most certainly pick up the book. It takes some dedication and commitment. Once you get the glossary, there's a glossary in the back, and once you really grasp the terms, then it really kind of opens it up, and it makes a lot more sense. And in fact, for this, I actually went through one of the authorized instructor seminars just so I could grasp, the nuances of it. But
I was going to ask you, how many times did you have to read the book before you started getting what he was talking about, or did that not intrigue you at all? Was that not part of your research?
No, it was, and I think, like I said, until I got with someone who was able to work through the glossary and then explain the concepts in kind of more everyday terms, that's when it really clicked for me, and I think that's generally true. So I think the ability to get the book and to become in a perfect world, I think a golfer gets Homer's book, works through the glossary, kind of gives it a cursory read, and it's cross-referenced, so you're jumping around. It's not like a start to finish. You can kind of this references that and then that back to this and whatnot. But there are authorized instructors, all over the country, all over the world, that teach the golfing machine, and and that's kind of the thing for me and I'm more of a word guy than a math and science guy, but the thing that really struck me was what Homer, when he would talk about how science doesn't take a day off. Newton's laws don't change whether you and I are playing a friendly round or Phil's trying to win the U.S. Open. Those principles are the same, and they don't change. And so they're irrefutable. You can't. There's no denying science, as opposed to feel. And one of the other key things that Homer said that was revolutionary was to learn feel through mechanics, as opposed to learning mechanics through feel. And a lot of instruction books and teachers, talk about feel, and then I just, to my mind, it would be awfully difficult to start with feel and then try to, fit the mechanics into that. That to me is like trying to put on, someone else's left shoe with your right foot,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it just makes more sense to learn proper mechanics, and then from there to start, finding your way through field.
Well, I've always felt that people talk about thinking outside the box, and I've always thought that you really can't think outside the box until you understand the parameters of the box.
Yeah, exactly. No, absolutely. You got to know what's in the box before you can think outside of it. Otherwise, what you're thinking might actually exist inside of it.
Right, exactly. You've got to be an insider first to get outside of it.
Right,
which makes it much harder.
I think that's the real key to this is spending is like I said, making the commitment to to understanding what Homer is talking about. It's not easy. There are a lot of easier books to read, but I don't know that there are many better, more more scientifically founded books out there.
I've been emailing with a listener who's asking me about the details on swing mechanics and looking at this DVD and reading this book, and I'm like, for me, I can't learn that way. I need one instructor to focus on me and not get all this different input on how to do things, because it just makes me crazy and I get overwhelmed and I can't get anything.
Well, then you're definitely in the camp of people who should go seek an authorized instructor because it, But here's the other thing too: is that a lot of people told Homer that he should make it easier to read, and he just vehemently resisted that his entire life. And part of the reason was that every word has a definition, and if you change the definition, you therefore, change, the meaning of what you're trying to instruct. And he always said that, people were going to have to, he wasn't looking for the casual student. He was looking for the serious student who was going to bring, you were going to have to step up to the material as opposed to the material coming down to you.
Right. We've had a club fitter on the program who is committed to working with golfers who are committed to getting to be single-digit handicap players. I mean, it's like, if you just need your grips changed or you need new shafts, don't bother this guy. It's like, if you're there and you want to work really hard on improving your game and you want the exact right tools to use, then you got to go to this guy. It's almost the same. I'm curious. How long was it between the time that he had his first round where he shot a 116, then his second round where he shot a 77?
6 months.
6 months. And he didn't play golf at all in between that time. He just did this research on the swing mechanics?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing that I found in my research, and I talked to, and it's interesting, too, there is... I could find literally no video of Homer. Now that's a function of the day, of course.
Sure.
But there's a ton of audio, and in fact, I listened to a lot of the audio, and speaking with 3-4 dozen different people who knew and worked with and were close to Homer. There's nothing that suggests that he played another round of golf in between. Whether or not he picked up a club and ever swung or hit a ball, there's no. I mean, this was 1939, so it's hard enough to find. I mean, think about that. We're going back, and I'm trying to write a book about a common simpleton guy who played golf in 1939. It's not like there's a wealth of research, that you're going to get there. But I was fortunate to in fact, in his Homer was a pack rat, and in his archives kept those scorecards, and those two scorecards are in the book. They're printed in the book.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing that suggests that he did play, and most of the most of the people that I talked to, went on record as saying that as far as they could tell, he did not play golf in between.
It's just one of those things that anybody who's ever played golf at all, if you told them, yeah, I've played twice. First time I shot a 116, then I played again. About 6 months later, and I shot a 77. It's like, no, I'm sorry, that's not possible.
Right.
You can't do that. No.
Just really something else. Really something else. I mean, it's, I've been at this for a good long while. I've been writing, for the better part of 20 plus years. I've written a lot of golf, written for a lot of different magazines, written a couple books that are, both of which were, based in historical research. And every once in a while, I have a pretty good sense of when I've got something and when I don't. And I just knew when I started into this that there was something unique and special here.
Well, it sounds like this guy was also born at the wrong time. I mean, if he was around today, he'd be a total techno geek. He would be a computer guy, or maybe he'd be golf. But it just, in reading it, he just sounded like one of the Silicon Valley, techno guys that are just changing the world today.
Yeah, but can you imagine, doing the level at which he did, without
the tools,
any sort of computers or calculators or things like that?
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. Unbelievable. Well, absolutely fascinating story, but two different things. I mean, there's Homer Kelley's book, and then there's your book, and they're very different things. But it's just a fascinating story, and you did a great job on your research and your writing. I enjoyed it very much. Thanks so much.
I very much appreciate that. And for those who are interested, there's more information and an excerpt and links to where you can buy the book online, and in fact Homer's book as well, all at homergolf.com, www.homergolf.com. Homergolf.com.
And are any of the audio files accessible there as well?
No, it was enough for me to write a book without getting into without getting into the multimedia aspect of it. There are online. I think as you go, other people have audio, Homer's audio, available online. I don't know if thegolfingmachine.com has it, but that's certainly worth a look there for readers or listeners who are interested.
Well, I would sure be interested in helping pursue that. We do a lot of audio here and would love to find ways. I'm sure the audience would also be fascinated in hearing some excerpts of that. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting stuff, I have to admit.
Fascinating story. Give us, we don't have a whole lot of time, but I would love for you to tell us a little more about your other book, The Seventh at St. Andrews.
Yeah, well, that was basically a good excuse to go hang out in Scottish pubs. And there you have it. Okay. The story came about when I had connected with David McClay Kidd, the golf course architect who really made his name at the tender age of 29 when he designed Bandon Dunes, and the story of how we met is as fascinating as anything else in the book, and that's all in the introduction. But we wound up, long story short, he'd called once when I was a travel editor at Golf Magazine. For some reason, I'd stuck his number in my phone. I was driving to the airport when I finally got my chance to go up to Bandon. I was driving to the airport. I got him. He was at airport security. I was going to Oakland. He was going to San Francisco. We were both headed to Portland and down to Bandon, and as it turned out, I was in seat 3B on the plane, and he was in seat 4B on the plane. And struck up a friendship, drank many pints, played a lot of golf, and then the opportunity arose for me. I was thinking about getting into books, and just literally sent him an email, which is in the book as well, that says, would you be interested in collaborating on a book about the new course you're designing over in St. Andrews? And the book is it chronicles the creation of the first new course built by the town of St. Andrews in the last 100 years. And so there are other courses there, but the Links Trust which operates the 6 courses for the town. Of course, the Old Course, the New Course, the Jubilee, the Eden, and then the Short Course and the Executive Course, which are the Stress Tyrone and the Balgove. The Links Trust was having capacity issues because anybody who lives in town or students can get an annual ticket to play the courses. So they were looking to build a 7th course, and everything about it just shaped up, brilliantly for a fascinating narrative from the politics of how, of the different factions that wanted it and the ones that didn't want it and the ones that you think did want it, actually didn't, and the ones you'd never thought you'd have on your side were. And then the actual plot of land was a derelict potato field with the town's sparkling new wastewater treatment sewage facility plopped right in the middle. And then the band of these artists who work in dirt are truly unbelievable, the shapers and whatnot. And, the team that David put together and the course that they came up with and just all the obstacles along the way. And at the end of the day, the Links Trust was looking for 18 holes, and what they got was one of the great new golf courses in the world. And so it was a unique opportunity to have seen it from the start in the dirt and to have followed that. And again, a lot of it is just as the Homer Kelley book is not an instruction book. This is not a how-to build a golf course. It's about the people and the place and the politics, and it's a really, I found a really interesting read.
Great stuff. The 7th at St. Andrews and the new one, Scott Gummer writes about Homer Kelley's golfing machine, The Curious Quest That Solved Golf, with a foreword by Steve Elkington. Scott, best of luck on the book.
Thanks so much.